The Obama administration wins its biggest battle yet with an assist from the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll hear from an advocate of Obamacare and the attorney who tried to derail it for the state of Nevada. And we'll check in with NBC News' political director, Chuck Todd, on what it means in November. That's all next on Face to Face.
This is Face to Face with Jon Ralston.
Welcome to Face to Face. We'll bring you newsmakers and commentary you won't find anywhere else. The diagnosis is in, and President Barack Obama's health care law is alive and well. The Supreme Court ruled this morning that the individual mandate and all other parts of the law are, in fact, constitutional, although they did make some adjustments on the Medicaid issue. Joining me now to talk about it, my friend from Washington, D.C., Chuck Todd, who's the host of the Daily Rundown and NBC News' White House political director. Chuck, thanks for coming on. I don't want to do so much instant punditry here, but tell me what the reaction is as people digest this.
Do we call this segment goatee to goatee, by the way, instead of face to face?
It is. Goatee to goatee, it is indeed.
Exactly. I will say the White House, there's relief here. They're not spiking the football. There's a sense of relief. They believed, the way a lot of other people believed, I think I was in this camp, that losing was a huge penalty for the president. It would have allowed Mitt Romney to say, geez, he spent 25% of his presidency on something that was not even constitutional. It would have really sort of shrunk the presidency, if you will, for Mr. Obama. And instead, he's vindicated. As a political asset, it's still unclear whether health care could ever be a vote getter, but it is not a what today could have been. It could have been a political disaster. Instead, it's a hurdle that's cleared. The president's going to be talking, I'm guessing, a little bit health care in the next week because there is a window to try to resell it, but he'll be back on the economy, and I think you're going to see Mitt Romney back on the economy pretty soon as well.
Romney, of course, pivoted to this is a tax, which essentially is what the Supreme Court decided, Chuck. So does he talk about Obamacare as being a tax and hurting the economy and use that as the economy? Or does he not want to talk about health care at all because of Romney Care?
Well, it's funny you bring that up. I think the White House believes that this is one reason why they think that at the end of the day, that healthcare won't be a net negative for them because of Romney and the unique factor he played in this, where some call Massachusetts the godfather, that Romney Care is the godfather to Obamacare. That said, I think this tax argument, it's not the easiest argument to make because it's only a tax if you choose to pay the tax. There is a way not to pay the tax, so this is a new argument to make in claiming somebody is raising taxes. The White House will say, hey, the Republicans have accused us of raising taxes on a whole number of levels. That's not going to stop. They don't see how this sort of gives them any more ammunition than the Republicans already believed that they had.
Real quickly, Chuck, we have only about a minute left. What do you think about this issue of the Medicaid expansion in the states? We've had our governor already come out and say he's probably not going to opt in. Does that become an issue, do you think?
Well, it's funny. I asked this of the White House. We had this long background briefing. They just say, look at history. There were plenty of Republican governors when Medicaid got started that said they weren't going to participate, and they did. When children's health care went in, there were Republican governors that said, we're not going to participate, and they say ultimately they did. They think ultimately they're going to participate, too much money on the table, too much money available, and that the White House says they will promise more flexibility than maybe they think they have, and when they see the flexibility they have in creating their own system, that more and more Republicans, governors, will agree to come in and agree to participate.
Chuck, it's a pleasure having you on the program, one of the smartest men in politics, goatee to goatee. Thanks for coming on, my friend.
All right. Thank you, sir. Good to see you. All
right. And when we come back, we're going to take it from both sides. We'll have the attorney who fought for Nevada against Obamacare and an advocate who we found her. She was celebrating, throwing confetti all over the place. Well, we have a couple of folks here later to talk about it. Stick around.
If you want to comment or have missed a program, just go face to Facebook with Jon Ralston, where you can click on links to the Las Vegas Sun, find Jon's columns, his blog, and links to past programs.
Welcome back across Nevada to Face to Face. We're continuing our conversation about the Supreme Court's ruling today on President Obama's health care law. Joining me, the man who fought to overturn Obamacare, attorney and state Senate candidate Mark Hutchison, and an advocate for Obamacare, Annette Raveneau from Know Your Care. Thanks to both of you for coming on.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
So is the lesson here that the plaintiffs needed better lawyers? Is that the issue?
Hey, I've done enough damage. My work is done.
Let me ask you about, I mean, this is a very interesting decision in this sense, and I haven't read it all, but I've read most of it. Here, the people on the other side of it argued, look, this violates the Commerce Clause. Right. They agreed with you. Right. You said that they couldn't compel the states to expand Medicaid. They agreed with you. And you still lost.
Right. Justice Roberts found an alternative way to uphold the law, and you saw Justice Roberts' reasoning. He said, we've got to try to find a way, if reasonably possible, to uphold a law enacted by Congress. That's a very deferential position to take. It's a very well-recognized tip of the hat to the separations of government and the separations of power, and Justice Roberts felt like he needed to find a way, and he found a way by identifying the penalty as a tax.
Why? The question is, why did he find a way? And let me show both of you a couple things from the opinion. First, here's from the opinion on mandate itself. Congress already possesses expansive power to regulate what people do. Upholding the Affordable Care Act under the Commerce Clause would give Congress the same license to regulate what people do not do. The framers knew the difference between doing something and doing nothing. They gave Congress the power to regulate commerce, not to compel it. That's great language, by the way. Right. Ignoring that distinction would undermine the principle that the federal government is a government of limited and enumerated powers. The individual mandate thus cannot be sustained under Congress's power to regulate commerce. Now, I'm going to read a little bit more on how he got there in a second, but let me just ask you, this was the argument that all the advocates made for the health care law, that Congress did have the power to regulate commerce. At the beginning of this, you start reading this, you had to be in a panic because it looks like it undermined your entire argument, didn't it?
Right, and you know, at the beginning, for instance, at 7 in the morning, you know, there was definitely conflicting information. First, it was not upheld, and then it was.
Well, a couple of networks actually had it wrong at first.
Right,
yep.
right. I was watching all of them. So, but yeah, basically now we know that Nevadans can have the Affordable Care Act. They don't have to be rejected anymore. They don't have to be worried that their children are going to be kicked out. Seniors have preventive services for free. Women, we are not a pre-existing condition anymore, and that is great. That's great for Nevada.
All right, you're practicing your lines, but we're gonna talk about whether all Nevadans are going to be covered, because this Medicaid issue is a huge issue, and we'll get to that in a minute. But let's talk about what Mr. Hutchison was talking about, how Roberts got to making this legal. The government presented several arguments, and the first argument, of course, was commerce, and they went down. But then that the individual mandate is constitutional because of Congress's power to lay and collect taxes. Here's from the decision. In pressing its taxing power argument, the government asked the court to view the mandate as imposing a tax on those who do not buy the product because, and this is citing a prior case, Mr. Hutchison, every reasonable construction must be resorted to in order to save a statute from unconstitutionality. Now, you have all these conservatives going crazy now on Twitter and everywhere else. Oh, Jon Roberts was our God. Now we found out he's an activist judge. But isn't that true of any law that's passed? It's presumed to be constitutional, so the Supreme Court should have done what they did.
Well, I think that Justice Roberts is an honorable jurist. I think he's intellectually honest. I think he's got a conservative approach to applying the law, John. And just like you said, a conservative application is we're supposed to defer to the co-equal branches of government, and where we can sustain a law, we should try to sustain it. Now, the dissents led by Justice Scalia, as you know, disagree with that.
Slightly.
Slightly disagree with that. But Justice Roberts, nevertheless, I don't want to see him attacked. I don't think he should be attacked. But he took the view that I'm going to try to find a way to uphold this law. There's nothing wrong.
That's their job, right?
That's their job. And this is not an activist court. These are judges and justices who take their job very seriously, and they want to apply constitutional principles to the cases that are before them. That's what Justice Roberts did. Am I disappointed in it? Of course I am. But did he get there in a way that prior precedent allowed him to do so? Sure. You could argue that he could have done something different as well. But I think that he took an approach that was consistent with his jurisprudence.
Well, what do you think about this using the whole tax issue? I mean, I don't think I've heard you use the word tax, and any of the times I've heard you argue for the Affordable Care Act. Does it bother you now that you're essentially going to have to push, oh great, we got our tax on?
First of all, it's people are talking like if all of us are going to pay for it. It's only a really small amount of people, maybe like 1% of the population of this country that might have to be, get this penalty if they don't.
It's a tax. You can call it a penalty all you want. They changed the name of it for a reason. Okay. You better embrace that, because that's what made it legal for you.
Well, it's a really small percentage of people. Basically, everybody that's complaining about it, and I'm sure you are one of them, you all have health insurance, you all love it, and you want your family to have it. And
she's accusing you of being one of the 1%. You get that, right?
No, you're not one. Because you have health care coverage. Nobody's going to get charged for this tax.
You said it with a smile. I'm impressed.
Nobody's going to be charged with this tax if they have health care coverage. It's only the people that can't afford it and simply just don't want it.
John, here's who's going to pay the tax. If you've got employer-sponsored health insurance, if you've got Medicare, Medicaid, you don't got to worry about it. You've got insurance. Everybody else who doesn't have that insurance is going to pay the tax. And this is going to be in the face of the legislation when it was passed, the promise by both the President of the United States and Congress that middle-class America and those who didn't have insurance would not be seeing their taxes increase. It's exactly what's going to happen.
But there's a lot of
Sounds
people...
like he's running for Congress, not the state Senate. Go ahead.
There's a lot of people that don't have coverage through their employer, yet they still have coverage. They still know that health care insurance is important for them and their families. It's just that 1% of people that have the money, because even if you don't have the money, then that doesn't mean you could be obligated to get something that you cannot afford. Is the people that could afford it, and they just simply think that my body's great, nothing's going to happen to me, and then they're not just going to take insurance.
Well, we have to, I know you want to jump in, but we have to take a break. I do want to get a little bit later into this Medicaid issue, because I think in many ways that is going to be the big issue in terms of implementing this from now on. But when we come back, we're going to show you how the president and Mitt Romney reacted, and we'll get reaction from our guests, 1 for, 1 against. Stick around. Welcome back across Nevada to Face on the day that the Supreme Court upheld the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. I have a couple of guests, both of whom are in pain. Annette Raveneau is learning to say the word tax, while Mark Hutchison is having to say, I lost.
And you're learning not to do Obamacare anymore.
No, but with the air quotes, exactly. Let's show with the two candidates for president how they reacted. I want to get your comment on it. First, President Obama delivered a statement from the White House after the decision. Here's what he said.
Whatever the politics, today's decision was a victory for people all over this country whose lives will be more secure because of this law and the Supreme Court's decision to uphold it. But today, I'm as confident as ever that when we look back 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, we'll be better off because we had the courage to pass this law and keep moving forward.
You know what's interesting about that is, of course, he never said the word tax either doing that. But do you at all, I mean, I think to the best of my knowledge, you're actually a human being too. And so, besides a lawyer, do you not feel, I mean, there was a sense of accomplishment here in Washington. They went through a lot. Democrats have been running away from this law ever since it passed like scalded dogs. There was a conventional wisdom that the Supreme Court was going to throw this thing out, or at least throw the individual mandate out. Can you now not see why these people are happy, sir?
Oh, I can see why they're happy, sure. I mean, this was President Obama's signature legislation. He had a lot of political capital wrapped up in this. What I can also see, though, is that the country shouldn't be particularly happy. We've got the economy and jobs that everybody knows is the focus. And if you look at the economy and jobs, the fact that Obamacare now will continue to be upheld is not good for the economy or for jobs. You talk to any small business person, talk to any small business owner, they're going to say, I'm not expanding, I'm not hiring because of the uncertainty of this law.
You're shaking your head, but there is some of that out there. You know there is. Now, whether it's because of fear-mongering or because of legitimately the uncertainty about what this is going to do, there are a lot of small businesses who are really worried about the effects of this act.
Right, it's because the bad marketing has been,
that's your fault.
The negative marketing has been really good. Yeah, you're right. You should bring me on more often. Yeah, it's the good marketing of the bad information, wrong information with the law, and that's the reason why a lot of small business owners are afraid maybe of the law. But everybody that I've spoken to and everybody that has come to our seminars and have used our free webinars have realized that they could actually take advantage of this. So yeah, there might be that one or two small business owners that just don't know the right information.
1 or 2?
Yes.
1 or 2 million, maybe.
John, not in Nevada, for sure.
John, the National Federation of Independent Businesses was a plaintiff along with the other states. They're the people who are in the trenches actually doing the job.
It's a very conservative group. Let's point out, they don't represent all businesses. Let's be clear on that.
They don't, but I would say the vast majority of small businesses in this country feel the way the National Federation of Independent Businesses do, which is you've got a massive now mandate upon employers. There's the employer mandate, and they don't know how that's going to affect their business. They don't know what that's going to do in terms of their bottom line. And I'm just telling you that is not a recipe for getting the economy back on track and for creating jobs.
Speaking of mandates, and this is really what I want to talk about when we come back for our final segment, the Supreme Court essentially said that the federal government cannot mandate the states to expand Medicaid. That is a huge deal. It's going to be a huge deal here. When we come back, we're going to talk about the implications of that. Governor Brian Sandoval has already said he's intended not to opt in, then kind of backed off in a statement and said it's not a final decision. We'll talk about that when Face to Face returns.
Jon Ralston wants to hear from you. Call 702-633-8748. Send an email to Jon at ralstonfacetoface.com.
Welcome back across Nevada to Face to Face. We're talking about the implications of that big Supreme Court decision today, which upheld the Affordable Care Act, but raised some questions about expanding Medicaid. We're talking with a couple of experts on that, one who was for the act and one who tried to sue to get rid of it. All right, first of all, before we go on to Medicaid, I do have to show you this priceless piece of tape from Barack Obama back in 2009 when a lot of people were saying this was going to be a tax, and Annette Raveneau was already cringing because she knows what's coming. Let's play this.
For us to say that you've got to take a responsibility to get health insurance is absolutely not a tax increase. What it's saying is that we're not going to have other people carrying your burdens for you, any more than the fact that right now everybody in America just about has to get auto insurance. Nobody considers that a tax increase.
I'm not going to show what Mitt Romney had to say because he essentially is going to go on. We have to get rid of Obamacare. You have to get rid of President Obama, and so we know what he's going to do. Don't you think this whole tax issue, though, if the Republicans do it right, can cloud all the good things that you've talked about that this act will do?
Well, we'll definitely hope not. People keep confusing this. It's a really small percentage, maybe 1% of the population that are going to have to be paying this penalty. So it's not everybody. Most of us have health care coverage. A lot of people that don't have, hopefully they would be able to get it through the exchange or something similar. But I definitely wanted to say something. The small business owners, anybody that has under 50 full-time employees, which is what we were talking about prior, don't have to offer health care coverage to their employees. So all of those small business owners here in Nevada that were scared about that, they could stop worrying about it. They don't have to get health care coverage for their employees.
What's the enforcement mechanism for this tax?
The enforcement mechanism is anything else that the Internal Revenue Service is going to enforce. You're not going to pay a tax. The Internal Revenue Service is going to.
They're going to come after you.
They're going to come after you. Yeah. So the good news is then, according to Annette, my friend, is that employers without at least 50 employees don't have to worry about this. Well, guess what? The employees have to worry about it. And guess what they get to go do? Now they get to go pay a tax that they were told by Barack Obama and the Democrats in Congress that they would never have to worry about, that the government would take care of them, and they wouldn't have to worry about paying a tax. Now they get to go out and pay a tax and file their income tax.
If they could afford it, and they could go through the Silver State Exchange, which Nevada is doing fabulous by implementing this, and then they could get subsidies so they could get insurance.
I don't know how you keep your politician hat and lawyer hat on. You're switching them back so fast. I mean, I'm getting dizzy. Have you talked to the governor about this? Because the governor has a big decision now on the Medicaid expansion, which the Supreme Court essentially has said, listen, you can't force the states to do that. He has said maybe he's not going to opt in. It might destroy the budget. But there's a real serious policy question here. Have you talked to the governor about that at all yet?
I haven't talked to the governor about it yet, but it is a big policy question because one of the victories that we secured through this decision, John, is that the federal government cannot compel states now to increase their Medicaid eligibility requirements on the condition that they're going to withdraw all of the Medicaid funding. And that was a 10th Amendment argument that we as a states prevailed on. And so the
states' rights, pure states' rights.
That's exactly right. So the important point there is that states now will continue to be able to fashion Medicaid according to the state solutions that they think are appropriate.
Here's the issue with Nevada, and I've written about this for years. States can be as expansive as they want, essentially, in providing Medicaid services. Nevada's always been as cheap as you possibly can. It's a decision. It's a political decision. It's a policy decision. You have to be worried, considering where you're coming from on this, that the governor is not going to do anything and that it's status quo?
I actually am not worried because Governor Sandoval is doing very well with the whole Silver State Exchange. He has pushed to make sure that there's other states that have simply decided we're waiting until the Supreme Court's decision. Our
Well, he said it was the law. I have to set up the exchange. That's all he did.
But there's other states that haven't done it.
There's a few
Florida.
Republican governors who, yeah, but there's just a few Republican governors who said, you know, heck no, we're not.
He could have been
going.
one of them.
But so why would you have any optimism when essentially the first interview he gives out of the box to Sam Shad is saying, right now I don't intend to opt in.
He's reconsidering.
He later put out a statement in which he essentially said it's not a definite no. He wants to explore the budget implications.
He needs to know what's best for Nevada instead of anything political.
But why? But here's what frustrates me. You may be in the state Senate next time, and they should debate this. You know, do we want to be the kind of state that wants to expand this coverage? Is that the kind of state we want to be or not?
Exactly.
And shouldn't that occur in this state?
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons that we were so happy with this decision under the 10th Amendment, is that states now going to have that conversation, John, that Washington, D.C. does not dictate what the solutions are for the state of Nevada on Medicaid, as they do in so many other areas.
Let's talk about, though, whether this ruling on that part of it undermines the intent of the law in the first place, which is to cover everybody.
Right.
Because essentially, the more narrow you are, the less you are going to abide by what the president and the Democrats wanted, right, which was to cover everybody.
Right. Well, I mean, right now, if you get chosen as one of our senators, then hopefully you will be able to vote for it, and you would be then Nevada.
I don't think that's going to happen. Not that he's not going to get there, but that he's vote for it. I don't know if he's going to get there.
Well, Nevadans need it, and I know you know how Nevada needs this.
That does undermine it, though. I mean, just from a practical standpoint, if you don't do the Medicaid expansion, which was compelled by the law, then maybe not, a lot of people are not going to be covered. And there's a ton of people who are uninsured in this state.
The Medicaid expansion was an important part of the law, John, without question. There was supposed to be as much coverage as possible.
He's for it.
Medicaid expansion was an important part of the law, and now the Supreme Court said the way that was done is unconstitutional, and the states go back to what they had before, and they decide voluntarily whether or not they're going to expand Medicaid or not. And if they don't, then those who don't have the coverage, guess what? They get to pay a tax.
We have 30 seconds left. Does Know Your Care now transform into like an advocacy group for doing the Medicaid expansion? What do you do now? Are you out of a job? Can you come on the show again?
I could definitely come on the show again. We're going to keep doing what we've been doing, is educating Nevadans about the Affordable Care Act. You can follow us on Facebook.com, Know Your Care, Nevada.
We're out of time. You can talk about whether you're going to endorse Hutchison for state senate later on. It's a pleasure having you both on the program. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And on the next Face to Face, how honest are cops in Nevada? A face-to-face exclusive investigation into drug-sniffing canines at Nevada Highway Patrol and Metro prompted a federal racketeering lawsuit. We'll talk with the attorney representing the law enforcement plaintiffs. That's on the next Face to Face. Thanks for watching, everybody.